it's really hard to address this whole notion of intimacy, giving it a light treatment. This is no skating over the surface conversation. It isn't about just cheerleading some ideal state. It's really about exploring the profound dynamics that take place between any two people that are attempting to have a relationship, a romantic relationship. Primarily, this is applicable to others as well, but primarily I'll be talking about what happens in primary relationship. And so now I want you to forgive me ahead of time, just for the depth that we need to go into this rocky road to understand, to uncover actually what's underneath the rocky road, which is a freeway. Most of us go into relationship thinking that we're just going to seek the freeway, and if we run into the rocky road, we tend to want to shy away from it. But actually, the freeway is underneath the rocky road. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I don't know how many of you have these similar kind of stories, but when I was in grade, I don't know, 9, maybe early grade 10, when one of our parents after school they'd be working and the house was free, we'd all kind of go over to somebody's house to do some heavy petting. We were too frightened to do anything more than that, but we would just kind of, everybody would just pile on couches and carpets and neck for an hour or two, and to the point where you're almost bleeding. And there was this one girl, and I think they're doing that now when you're 10 or 11. Things have changed quite a bit. In any event, there was this one evening or one day when there was this girl named Connie, who I had heard was fond of me, and she had heard that I was fond of her. And we were kind of playing this game of tag about connecting at this person's house after school, along with about 30 others. And we ended up on a couch together. And we ended up lying down together. And I was shocked what happened. I felt like I broke out in a skin rash. Like I could not lie still. I was itching. I just kept on pushing off. I was just kind of stunned because I was really looking forward to this session with her, and I couldn't stand it. And I was so puzzled by this that I went to the doctor and I explained what happened, and he gave me an ointment for a skin rash. He should have sent me to a counselor, because this poor kid in me, it took years and years and years and years for me to come to a place where I understood what was actually going on for me there and why it was going on for me there. And what I took into my adulthood in relationship, what was going on for me there. What goes on for so many of us there in our attempt to connect with another human being legitimately. So tonight, well, I should remind you too that things have changed, by the way. I now have, because of the work I've done in my relationship with Catherine, which is really my university, is just being in relationship with her. I now can lie down beside her, and I'd like staying there. In fact, I like spooning. And she won't let me because now I snore. That's a real drag. Anyways, that's the good news. So tonight I want to present 3 shifts in consciousness to understand how we kill passion and the secrets to actually making it sizzle. We're going to go on a trip into the inner mechanics of this process of intimacy. And like I said, this is no light treatment. So again, please forgive me. It's going to be a tough sleigh at first in terms of going in and uncovering the crazy things we do when we get scared. So fasten your seatbelts and be patient. The very place that is difficult in relationship is also where the treasures are. So the first shift of consciousness is that all relationships are here to promote mutual evolution. A serious and real relationship has in its core, it'll bring you to your knees. It will knock on doors that have been shut, that you hold prisoners, including yourself in. People think a healthy relationship is having a comfortable, perfect, easygoing fit. And that's what everybody wants. But it's not like that. A true healthy relationship is a mirror. A person who shows you, not necessarily by conscious intent, but it will show you everything that is holding you back. The person who brings you to your own attention so that you can change your life. It is by design not to just get what we need, to feel safe, secure, which are all essential and important, but to then grow, becoming more and more of realized and living as an evolving human being. And to evolve and go where no one in your family system has gone before you, which is what's taking place here. You can only go as far as what you have witnessed, what you've experienced, what you've known. To evolve and go where no one in your family system has gone before you, you must develop a differentiated self. I am not suggesting you must do this before getting into a relationship to qualify or to gain entry. No, in fact, it can't happen that way. It happens in relationship, where the relationship by design will knock on these doors. The difficult spots that we want to avoid or defend against don't only hold pain, which is what we think at the time. Don't want that, I'm out of here. No, they hold the treasure we are referring to. Tonight we will help you understand the process of developing a differentiated self, which is the essential ingredient of becoming an evolved human being. So personal evolution requires this process of differentiation. And it only happens in relationship. It doesn't happen in a book, it doesn't happen in a movie, it doesn't happen being alone. It happens in relationship. And without a differentiated self, true intimacy and healthy sexuality is actually impossible. So what is differentiation? Differentiation is your ability to maintain your sense of self while also being emotionally or physically close to another. I'll say that again. Differentiation is your ability to maintain your sense of self, your true sense of self, while also being emotionally or physically close to another. And from another slant, an ability of a person to maintain identity, belief, and feelings while feeling the pressure, real or imagined, to be what others want you to be or need you to be. This involves balancing two life forces inside of us. One is the force for togetherness, and the other is the force for individuality. Both are essential. To illustrate this, let me ask you, how close can you get to someone before you fear losing your sense of self? How quickly do you feel that you have to get away, push off, or perform in some way? How much and how long can you hold on to yourself? Keep your feet on the ground. A well-differentiated person can be close without feeling he or she is losing their individuality, right? And conversely, can be an individual or on their own without losing their sense of having closeness with another. In order to have true intimacy and evolve together, you must be able to keep these two life forces in balance, with one occurring without one being at the expense of the other. You must be differentiated. So here you are. This is the person you present to the world. two parts. The darker blue, there it is, I'm like a weatherman. The darker blue is a non-negotiable self, your authentic self. It is the self, it is self-validating. It doesn't require anyone in the world to, you don't require anyone in the world to feed it or supply it to sustain itself. It isn't a role or a function, it is a person. You can be close because you choose to be close. This aspect of self can stand on its own 2 feet. Now, this does not mean that it's rigid or controlling. It doesn't require defense or management. It just is. It's the part of you that is you, always has been you, and always will be you. Who is that that has always been there? Even in your earliest memory, right? What's your earliest memory? There you are. It won't recognize or barter itself. Your self-validating, authentic, and differentiated self can remain and be comfortable even in conflict, even under pressure. It holds itself because this part of yourself isn't threatened. Here you know exactly who and what you are. The light blue part, this light blue part is the only part of you that's your undifferentiated self. It's the part that negotiates self, is measured, has radar, focuses on other, even if it appears to be avoiding other. It's always looking out at the other to feel okay. It's always a little bit anxious, always knows where other is to either get something from or to get away from. Either way, the strategic self's sense of feeling okay depends on negotiating the preferred distance or closeness to the other, all to relieve or get away from a very familiar anxiety. In your romantic relationship, it positions or postures itself in 1 or 2 ways to manage this anxiety. You will either be a pursuer or a distancer to some degree. A pursuer or a distancer to some degree. All relationships will have some degree of both. It's never totally equal, despite the myth of what we believe a soulmate is. The pursuer, and there's that hand, will lean to seeking the other to make up for a perceived lack. It can be a quiet pursuit or a dramatic and expressive one. But exposed, the message is the same. Give me what I need. You have it. Complete me. I gotta have you. Talk to me. Give me a me. I will do more. I will be what you want me to be. Just fill me up. Stay close. Stay close by. I am incomplete without you. So focused on filling oneself up with the other in need, this person will overfunction to get a self reflected back to be a self. To get a self reflected back to be a self. This isn't all the pursuer is, of course, but when the anxiety is up, this is what the person can be, primarily other-focused for validation. In our Western world, we mischaracterize this pursuit of this person as the necessary ingredients of being with our soulmate. Not so. This particular myth about soulmates is permeated throughout popular culture in songs, books, movies, and poems. Most notably in, I don't know if you saw the movie Jerry Maguire, when Tom Cruise's character tells Renee Zellweger's, "You complete me," at the movie's climax. Somehow codependence has been romanticized since the dawn of time, as in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, where 2 star-crossed lovers cannot live without each other. For the pursuer, the relationship with other can become, at pivotal moments, more important than the relationship with self. This is the problem, not the solution. And then there's the distancer. Looks a little like me. Despite figuratively looking the other way, the distancer, when the anxiety is up, is always focusing on other as well, to make sure the other doesn't get too close or too far away, but still in critical moments being other validating, like the pursuer nonetheless. Because the other has the power to make the distancer lose their sense of self. That's why they have to get away. It's not that they aren't aware of other or feeling the other. They know very much. They're very aware of the other. The distancer can be controlling. And as opposed to the pursuer over-functioning, the distancer becomes an expert at under-functioning, learning to do the minimum. Establishes he or she establishes the rules in relationship, perpetually in need of space to recover, keep, or salvage a sense of self. The distancer leans to being certain about the way it is and has to be, and writes the rules, tends to make statements and doesn't ask questions. The distancer determines how close you can be, when you have sex, or if you have sex, or how you have sex. How much time together is tolerable, determines what you can talk about and what you can't. Underfunctions, in need of time away. And if you don't bother me as the distancer, I will maybe do things for you then. And of course, the distancer isn't like this all the time, but when the anxiety is up, this is the go-to. And so when the anxiety is up, that's me as the distancer. Or to pursue when the anxiety is up, to be close in order to be given a reflected self. That would be Catherine, that would be me. Although we look different, we are very much the same. Equal and opposite. We understand the same levels of intimacy. We are all with people that are at the same level of differentiation as us. We are, in a sense, who we sleep with. We will find each other. And for good reason, which I'll get to later. So how did we get this way? How do we become differentiated or undifferentiated? What is your level of differentiation? As I mentioned earlier, there is a force inside of you for individuality and a force towards togetherness or connection. They need to be both in balance. Ask yourself the question, to what extent did your family work towards promoting your individuality? The dark blue. Or to what extent did you work to preserve the status quo of your family? The light blue. Who worked for who? To what extent was your acceptance given to you for who you were unconditionally rather than what you did? Did you have to work for it? What were the rules? To the extent you had to work for the family's approval, you will have a self that is anxious, standing by to be on guard in strategy, still waiting for that approval which you fear can be given or taken away at any time. And this is how Catherine and I got this way. So Catherine and I meet, and here's what we bring in. Catherine with a dad, not there a lot of the time because he was traveling as a social worker. Like at least half the time he was gone. Brother born, he was displaced, she was displaced, perpetually being rejected by her peer group in school. This is Catherine's blue here. Feared she did not matter and feared abandonment. And she covered it up with a character that moved the goalposts. She learned how to do this. She became the nice girl to please the distancing male, to gain approval and acceptance, whether it was dad or boyfriends or me. She was other validated, focused for her survival, as was I. She looked for overt acceptance for men, to reflect a self back to her. The results in pursuing more in relationship with what the other would give her than who the other was in the early years. And not knowing the difference. Romantic ideation, waiting for Prince Valiant, needing a we to have a me. Pursuers are needing a we to have a me. For me, the blue is the self I made up growing up in a home with a violent alcoholic father. I believed men were bad. I must be bad too. Underneath it, all I feared was that I was defective. I found great acceptance in rescuing my mother and my sisters. I was the only son. Profound shame that I was not good enough covered up by my defenses of being Superboy. A fear that I would be engulfed by a woman at the same time, taking care of women so much that I have to run. I have to run to keep myself. I should have trained for the Olympics. And that's great for the rescue call. I was great for the rescue calls and the acclaim I got, but don't ask me to stick around and don't get too close to me. The blue region fears that if a woman gets close, she would not love me, but would find out how defective I truly am. That's what that teenager was feeling lying on that couch. But at the same time, needing to be approved that I was actually okay. Closeness was my kryptonite. So I end up controlling, not even consciously, just unconsciously having to, making the rules about how close we can be. The behavior there that covers up that fear is the runner, the untouchable. And despite my looking the other way, I was as much other focused as Catherine by needing to be liked, as seen as okay by her, but from a distance. My survival dependent and depends on being liked, or I am guilty and defective like my dad and like my family. Having Catherine criticize me can feel like death. Not nearly, I mean, I still get twinges of that, but not nearly to the extent that I used to. We weren't like this all the time, of course, and aren't. Neither are you. It isn't all we are, but when the anxiety is up, and that's the place we have to focus on, because that's also where evolution takes place or not. Is the underpinning of that anxiety, dealing with that anxiety. When the anxiety is up, when she gets too close or I get too far away, here it is in a nutshell. I am needing distance from we to salvage or preserve and protect my me. That's the motto of the distancer. Catherine is needing a we to have a me. Weird but true. This is the motto of the pursuer, needing a we to have a me. We are at exactly the same level of differentiation. We only meet those at the same level of differentiation, or it's like Velcro. We only meet those at the same level of differentiation or the same ability to legitimately be intimate. You are at the same level of differentiation of the one you are with that may flatter you or insult you, and with all that you have been with in your history. You are who you sleep with. And so we poke, Catherine and I. Just go to the next slide. We poke and take a look at each other. We poke out from our defended selves and notice each other across a room. Actually, this was in a lecture hall when I was giving a lecture, and she was in attendance, came up to say hello to me. The excitement. Those first few weeks of the relationship, there's so much to talk about. We're undefended, we're curious, right? You're not scared yet. We're open. Why is it so easy at the beginning? Why? The reason is because there's nothing at stake yet. More in relationship with what could be rather than actually what is. And that is okay, because we deserve that. And we can have that. But it's not quite that simple. At that stage, in those first few weeks, we celebrate everything. I remember in my 20s being at a party, and I overheard a conversation of two people, a man and a woman that just met. And she said, I went to high school in Kelowna. And he replied, he said, you went to high school? Guess what? So did I. Like just this idea of just finding everything in common and celebrating it. So we're not scared yet. There's nothing at stake yet. Boy, can we fall in love there. And that becomes the problem. Because when we fall in love, when we have that feeling of falling in love, they are now becoming important. And that's the key word. None of the problems get activated until the other starts to become important. And incrementally, right, as time goes by, the other becomes more and more important to you. More time together. The other introduced to friends, family, living together, a home, kids. Why is that a problem? Because once important, the other then has also power. In my case, as soon as Catherine became important, and it didn't take long, all my memories came up. This is the blessing and the curse. They need to come up to evolve. And when they come up, they also hurt. As I mentioned earlier, your partner will knock on doors that need opening, and you will hate it. I hated it. But you need it, and I need it. Catherine's quiet, but subtle looks of disappointment or disapproval about my not spending enough time with her was the beginning of that. So many memories unearthed again of fearing failure. I started unconsciously, if not consciously, recalling what happened the last time I made someone important in relationship and in family. It went all the way back for me. So about not being able to trust my father's love for me. And it wasn't that he didn't love me. I know he actually did. But when push came to shove, his love for his alcohol would come first. Sadly, I start to see more of my past instead of the present, believing that I'm not going to be able to count on it here either. And all that isn't necessarily conscious. It's just an unconscious reaction to needing to take care of self. Secretly, now we fear the other has power over us. I didn't tell her that. I wasn't going to let her know that. Because I don't want to want. We don't want to want. Even if we actually do. The self-validating authentic self, right? The self-validating, the green here, starts to be replaced by the other validating strategic self. And so we start backing up. I start looking out cautiously instead of coming out bravely. I start to distance even more. She starts to pursue even more when she sees me distancing. The more I distance, the more she pursues. The more she pursues, the more I distance. Which causes which? Neither. It's a cycle we know very well. Does that sound familiar to you? This has to sound familiar to everyone because every relationship has a pursuer and a distancer to some degree. This is what is in her toolkit, and this is what is in mine. I start to distance to keep and salvage my me, and she starts to pursue to get a me reflected back to her. I'm running away, and she is running towards. We are both running, just in different directions, but for the same reasons. She overfunctions, she knows how. I underfunction, I know how. And as soon as I become important, Catherine started focusing on being a good girl to get validation from me. I started looking out to figure out how to put the minimal effort into pleasing her to avoid being swallowed up and losing myself. I, as the distancer, will purposely look like I am distancing to broadcast that she is not important. But the truth is, I am distancing because she is important. Again, if she is important, she has power. So I am secretly equally frightened she will go away. Such a balancing act. But I am not going to let her know any of this. Isn't this an adventure? And it is. This is every one of our relationships, if properly told, could be a movie. All relationships will have a variation of this pursuer-distancer dynamic. This is important to understand. In your relationship, when the anxiety is up, you will fall into the category of either the distancer, who will sacrifice major aspects of the we to have and keep your me. Or the pursuer, conversely, will sacrifice major aspects of your me to have a we. And both are self-defeating in the long run. I'm going to say that again because to me that sums up the whole thing. If you can comprehend what I just said and understand it and integrate it, you're on your way. We fall into the category of either the distancer, who will sacrifice major aspects of the we. I'm going to give up on us to keep my me. Or the pursuer will sacrifice major aspects of a me to actually get one, having no faith in the me. This is your curse if you just leave it there. Spend a lifetime of playing this one out like this. And this is also the blessing if it's looked at and addressed properly. It becomes the launch pad for actually having a sensational relationship. This is what we know and create in the work we do. This is where the action is. This is what we deal with in the Awakening Workshop, FYI. And we're going to get there. This is what the Awakening is all about. Incrementally then, over time, as Catherine becomes more and more important to me, living together, house, sleep, step parenting, business together, same bank account. I never thought I'd ever do that. Can't imagine not having the same bank account now. Thus, having more power, my fears, and then my undifferentiated self that runs and pleases by doing things is what she knows. But the real me, to an important degree, starts to become hidden. The same for her. She seeks, desires, and represents it with a nice girl, but this is not her. She is nice and all those wonderful things, but she is strategically using it. And it's not her true real self. The nice girl can also turn into an angry girl when the reflected self is not given back to her. All that seemingly altruistic giving has an end game for all pursuers. The pursuer has a scorecard. Okay, so we don't want to want, but truthfully, we do want, and we are scared now. It is our nature to want. We do need each other. The force for togetherness never leaves, regardless of our strategies or convincing yourself otherwise. Because we're pack animals. There's no getting away from the core of what we truly need. So we never lose that need. And in that need, the other now has power and we are at their mercy. And we don't want them to know that. We now start to know more about each other's facade in the blue. Function from it rather than who we really are. And without real, authentic people in the relationship, the real relationship begins to die. The sizzle, the magic, the excitement starts to fade. We are becoming intimately bankrupt. Funds are being withdrawn and nothing is being put back in. And the only funds that count, that mean anything, that is felt, comes from our authentic selves. But that, as you can see, is disappearing. What is disappearing in chunks is out of the real, authentic real estate that we have. The strategic self is as meaningful, the make-believe self is as meaningful as playing Monopoly now. The acquisitions don't add up to anything real and don't go anywhere. For some reason, the sizzle of that first meeting is experienced as mysteriously absent. But I hope you are seeing that it's no mystery at all. If Catherine's overfunctioning pursuing, it looks like she was the one that was able. But really, we are both equally gridlocked in a world of fantasy, fear, and projection. This is the rocky road I'm talking about, so be patient with me. It's not a whole lot of fun, this part. It's just revealing what goes on. Hang in there. This is a highly anxious time for all of us. Decorated with avoidance, issues, and arguments all happen here. We still need the legitimate attachment to another, but the emptiness is getting deeper. The aloneness cannot be denied. The need remains. And this is where addictions provide an easy replacement source. Get that feeling without risking vulnerability. Drugs, food, TV, the internet, work, affairs. And at the same time, there has to be an explanation for this lack. What else are we actually fighting about here? It may be an issue on the surface. It may be about who hasn't done the dishes right. But the standoff, the impasse, is actually about power. You have the power over me, and I don't like it. So I'm not going to give you me if you're not giving you me. I'm not going to work harder than you. Both, in large part, are other focused. When the heat is up, one says angrily, I need you. And the other says, I need space. And this is where sex becomes routine or just going through the motions. Relationship is gridlocked. The battleground becomes personified in the bedroom. The need for the distancer to be safe can become sexually uninterested or having sexual dysfunction. And more often than not, this is not a sexual problem. It is an intimacy problem that has more to do with differentiation than anything else. The light blue or strategic self cannot be intimate. The light blue or strategic self cannot be intimate. But boy, do we try. Only the authentic self can. More than likely, this isn't a problem whether there is love in the relationship. This is the tragedy. No, it is more likely a problem whether someone can let their real selves be available to be loved. So at this stage, the view from the blue tends to see what we fear. The authentic selves become more and more distant and hidden. How are you going to feel love there? It's impossible. It gets intense. We fight over small things, hiding the real problem of being alone and feeling the very real pain of not knowing each other any longer. More knowing what we fear. And the temptation here is to address just the symptoms, that red region, the things that erupt, or even consider to end the relationship. The fallout or symptoms from this fear are many at every level of the relationship. It's now felt you're alone in conversation. You're alone at the dinner table, in the living room, and in a personified way in the bedroom sexually. And the latter stages are when the fight is over and indifference sets in. She stops pursuing, he stops running. It's just cut off, maybe just coexisting. This could last a lifetime. Sometimes for the distancer, it can initially feel like heaven or peace. She or he is off my back. But really, it's close to the end. We're getting to the good stuff. Okay, and so now for the good news. You and I can wake up and become differentiated in the middle of all this. This is where it happens. To some degree, this has to happen for the good stuff to happen. This is the doorway to another world. We can pioneer a path to self-validated intimacy. And what is self-validated intimacy? This is the credo. This is what we could put on our fridge. I don't expect you to agree with me. Somebody has their mic on. I'm hearing you speak. Could you, do you see where it is, Craig? The credo for self-validated intimacy. I don't expect you to agree with me. You weren't put on this planet to validate and reinforce me. But I want you to love me.